Hi, I'm Johnny Merritt, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with not only my client, but a dear friend, Ben Broughton. Thank you, Ben, for being on my show today. Ben, will you introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about how long you've been in Austin and what you do in the business world?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Johnny. So my name is Ben Broughton. In the business world, I do commercial real estate development with a partner, and we started the company in early 2020. So, it's been an interesting ride to start, but we've got a lot of opportunity. It's great to be in Austin and in real estate development right now. I came to Austin in 2000. I grew up in Victoria, Texas, and have been here since 2000, except for a year in Mexico and then 1 year in Dallas.
Well, that's great, Ben. Let me tell you, listeners, this is a great guy, just in integrity and a great builder, and just love to hang around with him. And I want, Ben, the last thing we'll talk about is your new business. I want to talk about that because I want you to tell the listeners about that. Let me ask a few questions before we get to that, if you would. As you think back on partnerships you've had with attorneys over the years, what advice would you give legal professionals like myself that will improve how we provide services to our clients?
It's intimidating to try to give advice to somebody like you that's been doing this so long and that I respect so much. But I think from my perspective, I usually struggle the most with knowing how to balance the advice of an attorney, whose focus is often risk mitigation or risk management, right, with the necessities of getting a deal done, right? And business deals are fraught with risk. That's the reason that there's money to be made. And so, I think there's different attorneys have different approaches of how to communicate where risk is highest and what risk is allowable in their mind. But, all attorneys essentially are kind of protectors of their clients. And so, I would say any attorney who wants to become a really valuable business attorney or transaction attorney needs to develop a sense of we've got to get deals done. And that means that there's going to be risk. And while an attorney may understand what risk is acceptable and what's not inherently, I think a lot of them struggle to communicate to the business professional that same kind of gut feel of where the risk, where the line of acceptability is, right? And that's really what I think is critical for business people to understand from their attorney is where can I give, right? And what's my ultimate potential risk exposure if I give here?
I love that. And it seems to me that attorneys, we often get out of our lane, if you will. You guys hire us for specific legal issues, and you guys are really the business people, the entrepreneurs. Do you find at times that attorneys will get out of their lane if they're not careful?
Yeah, and I think getting out of your lane as an attorney can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, right? And so I don't want to blanketly condemn getting out of your lane. One of the things that I really value about your experience is, you've had vast business experience. You've seen lots of deals done. I've only seen the deals done that I'm part of, right? Like other business people are typically not letting me see their deals or how they're put together. And so, I would say getting out of your lane, in terms of being able to just kind of advise on deal structures and your thoughts on that deal and whether it seems like it, is consistent with other deals you've seen in that market sector. I really value that. And then maybe I'm unique in that, right? So, I would say get out of your lane all you want in that. Where I think getting out of the lane is problematic in my mind with attorneys is, you get a deal put together and you need your attorney to, kind of finish this deal. And I'm trying to think of a great example, but there's been instances where I've had attorneys who have entered into the point of we've got the deal negotiated in general, right? And then the deal falls apart when the attorneys start negotiating because they're bringing up issues that they're aware of that could be potential problems, and kind of creating a stalemate between the legal teams, and it's something that neither of the business owners or businessmen care about, right? It's something that it's kind of a peripheral issue to them, and either one of them would be happy to just let it go, but the deal stagnates or starts to become combative because the legal teams have gotten into territory that neither owner really care about.
Well, that's great. That's a great discussion, Ben, and thank you for the kind words. And that's why you're so good is you understand the importance of the client being very involved, and I love that. Let's talk about something dear to attorneys, and that's compensation. And let's be honest about that. What are your general thoughts about the ways that attorneys are currently compensated?
Well, I mean, I like the way that trial attorneys are compensated, the ones that don't get paid unless everybody gets paid, and then they take 40%. Right. But, in general, the idea of hourly billing seems to be fraught with problems. It really isn't. It's I think the way, an inside, if you were to look at the way that clients or that attorneys bill, I think they're most highly compensated by bringing in clients and billing those clients, right? Like those are kind of the two big metrics that law firms use to pay attorneys. And, you can verify that or not. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And so, that it's essentially measuring then whether or not you're bringing in clients and whether or not you're billing them. But it kind of incentivizes the attorney's output over the client's results, right?
Right. And
so it's also always odd to me. It seems like a somewhat inverted management structure, right? Where in a typical business, the executives, as you move up in the company, there's this incentive for executives to push work to the lower levels so that the executives can be focused on only the things that only the executives can do. Right. With an attorney, as you progress through your career, your billing rate goes up. And so whether or not you're involved in complex legal strategy or whether you're editing a Word document for spell check, you're getting the same hourly rate, right? There doesn't seem to be that same incentive to push work to lower levels, which has always made me a little uncomfortable. But, I also think that, attorneys, typically, there's not really an aligning of interest in a business deal where the attorneys are incentivized to take the risks, right? And it keeps going back to risk for me, but that's, the way that I kind of evaluate my relationship with, attorneys in general and you in specific is the attorneys are often the closest confidants of the businessman, right? The attorney-client privilege creates a very secure relationship that the businessman doesn't enjoy in other service industries. I think the attorney's breadth of knowledge plus their ability to think critically about complex issues makes them a valuable ally. And then, they're often, I think there's a special connection between an attorney and a client because the client will often turn to the attorney when they feel vulnerable, right? And so there is something powerful about the psychological connection between a client and attorney because the client can see the attorney as a protector oftentimes. And so all of those reasons, I always kind of view my attorneys as my consigliere, right? And, even in The Godfather, the consigliere was the family attorney. And so, if you kind of piece all that together and then you look at, okay, so now this businessman has to go out and do a deal. And then they have to bring this attorney in and they have to believe that the attorney is incentivized to get the deal done. And then you look at how the payment structure works. What is the attorney's incentive really with regards to payment? And oftentimes the attorney is making an hourly rate, right?
Right.
So whether or not the deal happens and whether or not the deal is successful is not really a factor for the attorney in terms of compensation. And the dangers of that is that an attorney is then therefore considering that, okay, longevity with this client is my key. And the way I make sure I don't lose a client is I never let them get harmed because of my work. And so they're incentivized then to do maximum risk reduction, which is often, as we shared, antithetical to getting a deal done.
Right.
It's kind of like, I mean, this is, an interesting period of time we're in where our country is kind of being informed on how to run by an epidemiologist, right? And
Right.
anyone's view becomes myopic when they're very, very focused and good at one thing. And so, obviously, if you look to an epidemiologist of how to handle the country during a pandemic, it's to shut the country down, right?
Right.
The epidemiologist is not required to take into account things like economy or, progression of the society. And so, in that same regard, the attorney's myopic focus is risk mitigation. And so, in my mind, having an attorney who is freed up from that hourly billing is a huge benefit, right? And somehow tying an attorney into the overall benefit of the deal, I think, is a much better approach, right? And it takes some thought. It's not easy to roll an attorney into something like that, but that's always felt to me like a better way to go about it. And, the other thing that I think it does is it frees the attorney up to put in the amount of work that they feel they need to put in to do the job well. I actually had a conversation this week with a welder who said, I don't like being hourly. I want to go salaried. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, there's times where I want to finish a project or I want to do a project better, but I hit my 40-hour mark and I'm not allowed to work on it anymore that week, right? And I would rather just be able to stay and finish the job and do it well. There's a book called Shop Class's Soulcraft, and it's a brilliant treatise on the kind of the moral value of manual competence. But in it, it's this philosopher who's a motorcycle mechanic, and he'll say that there's times where the carburetor of this old motorcycle needs 8 hours of attention to be right. But he feels bad billing his client for 8 hours because the carburetor would have functioned after 4 hours. But to get it to be right again took 8 hours. And so he would put in 8 hours, but then bill the client for 4 hours. And that I know that attorneys, and oftentimes great attorneys, struggle with that, right? It's, do I do this to the degree that my professional kind of desire to do things well wants me to, even though I know that I'm going to get, it's going to be problematic with the number of hours it takes. And so freeing the attorneys up from that conflict seems like a benefit as well. You
hit the nail on the head. I mean, I'd like to comment on every part of what you said because it's all good stuff. But you finished with my thought exactly. There are times when I don't want to be limited by how much time I invest in a certain project because I want it to be better than that. And so I think that's a great explanation. Thank you for that, Ben. Have there been times because of the hourly system that you have thought, I'd kind of like to talk to an attorney, but you've foregone doing that because of your concern about that expense?
Oh, yeah. I mean, many times where, I would get a contract and it's not there's been times in the past in particular, now I'm kind of moving into a period where the deals are big enough that, an attorney is it would be ridiculous for me not to. But I mean, in the last few years, for sure, especially in single family homes, there's a contract that, it's a promulgated contract, but the client wants to make some tweaks to it. And, you start thinking, well, I really wish my attorney could do this just to make sure that, because contracts are so tightly wound together, right? That, a change in one section that seems innocuous could actually unravel the whole thing. And so, you think, boy, this seems like such a simple change. I kind of want to make this and not have to pay an attorney to get involved in this. And so, you take the risk and you maybe you change it or maybe you don't, but, or just even advice at times, right? Is this like, what's the, do some issue spotting for me in this, at this early inception phase before, I'm way down the due diligence path, but, I've forgone it because of, not wanting to dump a bunch of money into this at that early phase, even though there's risk to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. In your prior answer, you appeared to talk about the benefits of having an ongoing relationship with an attorney. I started this over 30 years ago, and used to it. There really was long-term relationships between attorneys and their clients. The attorneys got to know the businesses. Well, tell me what you think about establishing a relationship with an attorney who kind of gets to know you, gets to know your business, gets to know your thinking process. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts on that. I think there's immense benefits to it. You kind of pick any one of those areas, and I think there's benefits. I mean, some of the more practical and less human side of it is, attorneys are usually they're not incredibly specialized, right? And so, if you're a real estate developer and you go to an attorney, that attorney's doing a lot of different kinds of deals, right? And so
Right.
there's a need for them to move up the learning curve on your particular organization, on the structure of your organization, on your business model. And so, when you don't have an attorney who's been with you a long time and who understands that, then you're paying for them to re-educate every time that you go. There's
Right.
inefficiencies to that, right? There's also gaps in their ability, to synthesize the way a deal works and the way an organization works and all the entities. I mean, we've had to create three-dimensional charts and graphs to understand it all, right?
Right.
And so,
Right.
when your attorney doesn't have that holistic picture of all of your entities and all of your deals, there can be gaps, right? And so there's threat to that. I think on the more human side of it, you're often, and this is probably, I value this highly because these are areas in business where I'm less comfortable, right? But, negotiations are difficult. They can be, they can be filled with kind of uncertainty. There can be a lot of pressure in them. And when, that's honestly one of the things that I really valued with you is when I'm in situations where there's lots of unknowns, we're having to do negotiation. You can't show your uncertainty at the negotiation table, but you've got to figure out how to get this deal done. The guy that's always standing next to you in those negotiations, it seems like, is your attorney, right? And having an attorney that knows you and can say to you, hey, that's not you, or, look, I think that you value this, and I think that you ought to hold your ground, stick to your guns. I mean, the value of that's immense, and it doesn't come unless you've been through it many times together, unless you know each other, and just the trust level, right? That comes with time. And so having an attorney that's walked with you for a long time and is walking right next to you through business and negotiations, and it's great. It's also just having someone who's kind of watching out for you. I mean, you've got blind spots, and the blind spots that I think can really get you are the legal ones, right? So, having your attorney there with you is immensely beneficial.
Well, and Ben, this has been a two-way relationship with us. I've appreciated having the opportunity to represent you, to be your friend, but I've also relied upon you to give me advice in my profession, and I've told you through the years that I've been troubled by how we bill and how we interact with clients. And so I've come up with this thought about a fractional general counsel, and that is an attorney-client relationship in which the attorney is employed by the client for essentially a flat monthly fee to provide, agreed upon services. And it really works well for businesses that aren't big enough, which most businesses are not, to have an in-house counsel, but would like to build a relationship with an attorney who's familiar with their business, kind of like we've talked about. And if you were to consider a fractional general counsel relationship with an attorney working for you in your business, what would be your primary concerns, Ben?
I'll have to think about it, because my initial response is that sounds amazing, right? That checks most of the boxes that are the issues I have with the way billing occurs. It frees the attorney up to put in however many hours they feel they need to get the job done right. It it aligns the attorney and the client much better than billing. It's no longer about attorney output. It's about getting the client what they need. The client then, you don't have that struggle of, do I call my attorney or do I email my attorney on this minor issue, right? Because you've got that built into it. And I think that it commits you to each other, right? So that you're developing that relationship that one day is going to be very valuable. I think that's, if I could communicate one thing today, I think it would be the power of a business attorney that you have a long-standing relationship with and can just be the guy that advises you on lots of things. The confidentiality component of the attorney-client relationship is amazing to me. And, it's also, again, it's the perfect discipline to be your advisor. And so what it does is it creates that long-standing relationship. A lot of people think that they keep this relationship with their attorney going so that if there's a catastrophe one day that they're covered, but that's not, over a 5-year period, 10-year period, that's not going to be the main value of having a relationship with your attorney, right? It's going to be honestly much more, it's going to be more spread out than that, and it won't be as acute. And it's actually going to be in the victories. It's going to be in the deals that you do get done and that go well. Those are the moments where you're really going to realize the great value of walking alongside a business attorney. So, I think the challenges with it obviously are going to be, there's that period between startup and, critical mass where you need an attorney. You can't afford an in-house general counsel. And that period is full of expenses and without a lot of money, right? And so It's going to be businessmen and women making the decision of, do we take this money in a period of kind of tight money, and do we use it for fractional general counsel, right? And in the broad spectrum of all the things that we've got to spend money on. And the interesting thing for me is someone who's been in the 10 years is going to look back and advise that person absolutely spend it on that, right? That would be some of the best money you spend. But I also know that if I was to go back and try to tell my 17-year-old self something, that my 17-year-old self probably wouldn't listen. So, the concept, I love it. I think it's great, right? And it's now, I think, going to be, are we able to talk to startups or kind of younger companies? And honestly, I even like it for a more mature company, right? Like, do you really need an in-house attorney? Do you need in-house counsel, or is fractional counsel a way to get the same thing, the same benefit, right, of a long-standing relationship with someone who intimately knows your business, but for a reduced cost?
Right. I love that, Ben. And I'll say this, I also think it's important for those of us who are even thinking about this concept, there's a preliminary time where it may not even fit yet for a brand new business. And then during those early periods, we still need to be flexible, hoping to build in a value way, but not imposing the monthly charge on clients. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great solution to the new companies, but I don't know how you work through the business model of how do you end up charging, a company like that's intimidated by committing to, a set fee on a monthly basis, but still, wants something other than that hourly model. Right.
And we're working through this as well. Ben, you're no stranger to entrepreneurship. You started your own construction handyman business while in grad school, and your wife, Ruthie, has an incredible success over the last 9 years with her Austin bridal shop, Blue Bridal Boutique. After years in the industry, you've recently stepped out and become an entrepreneur again. A big project, as you talked about, as we started this program. Tell us about what motivated you to take that step.
So I've always, I really value and enjoy jumping into the deep end of a pool. And
Right.
so I try to kind of, right when I get comfortable, I try to take on a new challenge. And so, I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing companies in Austin. And it's been challenging, and, I've grown and learned, and really bright people have given me amazing opportunities and poured a lot into me. Right. And so, late last year, I decided to move out on my own, start trying to do this, and started to meet and talk with a friend, Garrett Martin, who's got a single family, very successful single family real estate development and construction company in Austin. And, at the time, commercial real estate development was not something that I was very experienced in, or he was. He's actually got quite a bit of kind of land development and commercial development with some of his associated projects. But so wait, can we start this one over?
Yeah, please.
I don't feel like that one's going well. And actually,
yeah.
So I kind of wanted to ask you a follow-up on this general counsel one.
Please.
Can we do that?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So, I'm trying to think of the right way to do that transition. And
well, why don't I say this? Listen, Ben, I love that answer. I love the experience that you've had, and how it's and the benefits you think that there will be from the fractional general counsel. And I also love the advice that you, frankly, I've got to be honest to our listeners, a lot of this concept came from a lunch that my assistant and I had with Ben Broughton. We went to lunch, and I was talking to him about some of my concerns and how I wanted to change some things. And you said, Johnny, you need to be who you are. And so what questions would you have, if any, Ben, as I start this process? Do you have questions for me that I need to think about?
Yeah, it's cool to hear that our conversation has kind of launched this idea, because it really does seem like it's a great approach to solving this and to providing services, kind of on-demand services for companies that need counsel. I think one of the questions that comes to my mind at the moment is, as you roll out a fractional general counsel model, and you've kind of, I think, have to stagger it with some of the more traditional model.
Right.
How do you handle being able to bring clients in and still, because I think with the fractional general counsel, the client is going to want a level of customer service that,
right.
It's almost going to feel like buying a membership to an exclusive club, right? How do you
right.
handle the growth of your business with still being able to provide the kind of the attention and the focus that the clients of such a program would want?
That's a great question, Ben, and that it's a growing process for us. But I'll tell you what we're doing right now is what we have told our clients is that we will evaluate this at the very least at the end of every 6 months, and more common if we need to. And the reason for that is what we have found since we started this is there have been times that the client hasn't needed the amount of time that we've allocated to them. And we've even had a client that overpaid. And so I gave them 2 months of free, just listen, we're going to continue this service. We're going to reduce your monthly fee, but we're going to give you 2 months free, as if you paid. And then also it gives us a chance to evaluate what additional help we may need. Are we spending a lot more time? For instance, I had a client this month that they're paying a $5,000 monthly fee, and it was reported to me yesterday that we have $13,000 in fees invested, which I love. That doesn't bother me at all. It shows me that the client is getting good service. But I want to make sure that I express my priority. It's not is our fee fair to us? Although that's important. We, like everybody, we want to be paid. What's important to me is that we are providing the service, the personal service that the clients need. I think I've told you, Ben, as a builder, I used to compare myself to a plumber until I built onto my house and saw what they did and figured out I was offending the plumbers by saying that. But the fact of the matter is, if attorneys, we're service providers. We need to listen. And so I hope I've answered your question, but I guess the best way to answer your question is it's probably kind of like what your new business is going to be. You have to move and adjust with every client, frankly, every month, if not every day. And at the end of the day, what you want is the client to say, you know, I got a great service for a great value. And so did I address your question?
You did, yeah. You know, the way that my mind works is, you know, once there's an idea, then I start looking for how it can go wrong, and so that we can make sure it doesn't, right? And you know, one of the things I love about your model is it gets away from that, the drive to bring in new clients and then bill them, right? And I think that what we need to watch is that, look, this fractional general counsel is, you know, that it doesn't turn into how many people can we enroll, right? Versus, you know, let's enroll a number. And then, you know, I know professionals who are service providers, certified financial planners who will cap their enrollment, right? Because they believe beyond that, they're stretched too thin. And so, you know, like the thought would be, hey, at that enrollment, then instead of, you know, going out and spending time finding another client, go and take one of your existing clients to lunch if you got some margin and just get to know them better, right? And so, you know, I like that you're the one that's coming up with this idea and launching it, because that's the feel that I think it will have under your purview, right? I don't, you know, I think this could turn into just another way to, you know, to grab more billings and more clients. And, you know, I think under your leadership, though, that would be the feel inside of such an arrangement, you know? So yeah, you answered my question.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ben. Kira, my assistant, Kira Slater, and I have specifically talked about, you know, there may be a time we need to put a cap, because if we don't provide superior service, we'll lose clients, and we don't want to do that. Tell me what else, Ben. I really want the listeners to be able to hear about your new opportunity, and you may or may not want to say more about it, but I'm just so excited about that opportunity for you. What else do you want our listeners to know about what Ben Broughton is doing in this new opportunity?
Yeah, so I'm excited about it too. You know, a partner and I, Garrett Martin is my partner. He's just a really brilliant developer in Austin, and we've teamed up to start a commercial development company. You know, I'm coming more out of the single family construction and development world. I have commercial construction experience, and you know, I've had enough experience in the commercial world to understand it. But you know, it's exciting to be going into something where I'm going to be drinking from a fire hose again for a period. You know, that's my favorite place to be, is in the deep end. And so, you know, we've started it in early 2020 with a very large office pipeline, which, you know, if you've been paying attention to 2020, that makes it, let's just say we've been re-gearing. And so, you know, we've got a lot of capital, which is great to deploy. We're kind of a hybrid of a capital company and a commercial development company with vertical integration. And so, you know, we've got projects rolling. We're in site plan, working on some rezoning and some exciting things that I can't quite talk about yet, but you know, in the future, you know, over the next year to 18 months, I think there's some really exciting things that we're going to be rolling out. So, you know, it's, I mean, you walk through the kind of the setup and structure of it, and with me, and I'm really excited. I'm very bullish about what we're going to get to do.
Well, and for our listeners, guys, Ben Broughton, you guys watch for his name, because he's a very impressive young man. He's going to have great success. I'm lucky that I get to interact with him and learn from him. As you can see, I've learned from him. This old guy has learned from this young man a bunch. Let me finish with one last question, Ben, if I may, and I'm going to just leave it open. Based on the experience that you've had so far in the business world, a young professional like you, what if you had one thing that you want to be a takeaway, and you had a takeaway for me, for attorney before, but this is for you, a young person that wants to follow in Ben Broughton's footsteps as an entrepreneur, perhaps in real estate, perhaps in other things. What's the one thing that you advise that you would want to give them?
Oh, wow. You know, I feel like an old guy when I say this, but, you know, I think one of the challenges of kind of future generations is that they've grown up hearing more about their rights than about their responsibilities. And I'll tell you that the thing that I would say, go into your first job and just, you know, believe that you are at the bottom rung and you are starting at the bottom, and make yourself valuable. Work beyond what your job even calls for. And, you know, that is kind of obviously in order to make yourself valuable to the company, but it's also to teach yourself the discipline of self-motivating and working hard at an early phase in your career, right? Because after 10 years of that, or after 5 years of that, the side benefit that I think you should consider the side benefit is that your employers are really going to be impressed with you, right? But right. The main benefit of that is actually to yourself, and it is you will be light years ahead in terms of grit, right? The ability just to get after it and self-motivate when no one's watching, and create value. And so, you know, that's across any industry. And then the other thing I would say is, you know, especially if you're entrepreneurially minded and you kind of start a business young, the pressure to not fail is immense. But the time to fail is when you're young. You know, don't fail because, you know, and I always encourage people to fail young. You know, some get the idea that they should go out and try to start the next Amazon, right? Because they're right. guaranteed to fail. And so, you know, it's like, well, I'll go fail. If that's all I got to do is go fail. You know, don't fail on an idea that's ridiculous. Fail on the idea that you really believe will make it, right? And then give everything you got and fail. And that's the only way I know to say it, because it's that fear of failing that keeps so many people from trying and from launching out, right? And man, when you're young, fail all that you want to. As long as you're trying to do something that you believe in, it's worth failing. You know, I mean, I said my 17-year-old self couldn't listen to me now, but my 24-year-old self couldn't have listened to this either, right? But, you know, you can fail all the way up to 30, and then you start doing what you're doing and you'll be fine. So that's kind of my 2 bits of advice.
That's great, Ben. Actually, you can fail up to 59 and still do fine. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see what a fortunate guy I am, both individually and as a professional, to have a client and a friend named Ben Broughton. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time this morning. I know you're busy. You're getting something started. And you've dedicated some time to this program. I appreciate it. And thanks. There will never be a first, and frankly, I don't know how a second can be any better than this one. So thanks a lot, Ben.
Well, Johnny, thank you. I'm excited to watch the second. This is going to be a great podcast, and I'm looking forward to seeing who all you get on here.
Hey, you've got some people in your background. Tell them to come in, and let's see who they are.
Oh, it's my wife and my daughter.
Oh, that's outstanding. Okay, thanks a lot, Ben.